James entered his modern office building as the autumn air blew through the busy streets of Manhattan, his mind already racing with the meetings of the day. He had everything most people could possibly want at the age of 35. A computer firm worth billions of dollars, a lovely home, and a devoted wife. However, he had been plagued with a restlessness that had been bothering him lately. He and Catherine had dreamed big in their small apartment 10 years prior when they were college sweethearts. She had put in extra hours at the hospital while he spent the night coding and creating his startup from the ground up. They had laughed about their big-time goals and shared quick noodles. When even he doubted himself, Catherine had been his pillar of support and faith. James was standing in his penthouse office with a view of the city, adjusting his designer suit and checking his Rolex, which was very different from the second-hand watches he used to wear. He received a message on his phone from Lily, the young model he had met at the charity event last month. Reading it made his heart rush, like it always does when she calls him. All set for lunch? She sent a message with a picture of herself at their regular location. When James looked at the framed picture of him and Catherine on their wedding day, they both looked like they had won the lottery. His gesture, which had grown more and more prevalent in recent years, was to turn the framed face down. Since meeting Lily, the last few months had been extremely hectic. She embodied spontaneity, enthusiasm, and a new outlook on life, all of which were lacking in his life at the age of 24. Catherine talked about settling down and establishing a family, whereas Lily talked about seeing the world and experiencing life to the fullest. It had become a ritual in his marriage. After long hospital shifts, Catherine, who was still employed as a pediatrician despite his affluence, returned home exhausted. Schedules, housekeeping, and future plans were the topics of their discussions. The fervor that had once fueled their love had subsided, giving way to routines and cozy silence. James found himself drawing Lily's name in his notebook like a kid during board meetings. She restored his sense of youth, rekindling emotions he believed he had forgotten in the haste to establish his empire. Their covert lunches evolved into dinner dates, and before long they were getting together whenever they could. He was sitting in his home office one evening when Catherine brought him tea, as she had done back in the early days of the company. "We don't talk much anymore," she murmured quietly, setting the cup beside his laptop. "We used to share everything, do you recall?" This was the first time in months that James truly looked at her. She still had the same lovely eyes that had carried him through his lowest points. But maybe he had changed or something had changed. He was overwhelmed by the desire for something new, different, and more. Although it wasn't an easy choice, James proceeded with the same kind of accuracy that had helped him succeed in business. He methodically organized everything, found new living arrangements, and hired the best divorce lawyer in the city. On a soggy Thursday, their wedding anniversary arrived. Like in the beginning, Catherine had prepared a simple dinner at home. Rather, she discovered divorce papers next to the celebratory cake she had ordered on the dining table. Through the steam of her unfinished coffee, James saw her world fall apart and muttered, "I can't do this anymore. We've become more distant. My personality has changed since our marriage." Catherine didn't yell or hurl objects. It was terrible when she didn't speak. She just stood there, holding her medical ID and the papers, badge still dangling around her neck following her shift in the hospital. "Is there a different person?" When she eventually did inquire, her voice was hardly audible. James could not look her in the eyes, so he nodded. Even his own ears seemed hollow as he muttered, "I'm sorry. You deserve to be loved the way you deserve to be loved." He left their penthouse that night with a small suitcase full of necessities, and the security guard who had watched them move in as newlyweds gave him a silent, scolding glance. His phone buzzed once more. At their new flat, Lily was eager to begin their life together. The engine purred to life as he got into his Ferrari. He got a final look at the structure where he and Catherine had constructed their dreams through the rearview mirror. He briefly recalled her giggle and how she had jumped into his arms, both of them crying with excitement, after they had finally earned their first million. After a decade of shared ambitions and 7 years of marriage, James drove off when the traffic lights changed to green. With Lily, his future was full of promise and excitement. But as the city lights flickered by his windshield, A tiny voice in his mind questioned if he was heading in the direction of or away from bliss. In Lily's arms later that evening, he pushed aside the thought of Catherine standing by alone in their kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of what should have been their anniversary party. He'd already decided. The news would be released tomorrow, and his public relations team would handle the aftermath. In the fast-paced world he currently lived in, life would go on as usual. He was unaware that this choice would cause things to happen that would come back to haunt him in ways he could never have predicted and have repercussions that money could not reverse. Catherine sat by herself in her doctor's appointment, staring at the ultrasound screen in shock 2 weeks after James's departure. With wide eyes, Dr. Wilson repositioned the probe. "This is really remarkable," she replied softly. "I saw 4 different heartbeats." Catherine quickly put her palm to her mouth. "Quadruplets." The word rang like a faraway bell in her head. James had always insisted that they should wait for the perfect moment, even though she had desired children for years. Now she found herself pregnant with 4 children, all by herself. Curling up on the couch with her hand resting on her still flat stomach, she returned to the empty penthouse. Adjacent to a pile of gossip magazines that splashed her husband's new relationship across their pages, the divorce papers were left and signed on the coffee table. Lily, the teenage model, looked stunning on James' arm during a charity event. The courage in her voice surprised her as she spoke to her unborn children. "We're going to be okay." She had worked as a pediatrician for years, and while she had learned about the difficulties of having several children, she had also witnessed the remarkable fortitude of mothers and children. She was sitting at her kitchen island that night, picking at a bowl of soup, when James' lawyer texted her. The divorce process was to be accelerated. Catherine glanced at her phone and then at the ultrasound images that were arranged on the counter. After much deliberation, she decided. James would not hear about the infants from her. Instead of resentment, she made the decision out of a strong desire to keep herself and her kids from being the focus of a media circus. She would select her own route, just as James had selected his. Her children wouldn't be used as leverage in the contentious divorce of a billionaire. The following few months flew by, filled with meticulous preparation and doctor's appointments. Catherine immediately set about getting ready for her new life. She painted the home office in gentle yellows and greens, turned it into a nursery, and placed 4 similar cribs in a semicircle. She added something new every weekend. Cuddly animals, soft blankets, and little aunties, all in sets of 4. She found support from her hospital co-workers. Her high-risk pregnancy was accommodated by her department head, Dr. Chun, who changed her schedule. In order to ensure that she ate healthily and napped in between patients, the nurses fussed over her. When her long-dead parents were unable to be there, they became the family she needed. Catherine, hardly able to cover her expanding belly with her white coat, waddled around the hospital hallways at 6 months pregnant. Finding strength in her routine and in assisting other kids, she had made the decision to continue working for as long as she could. When she revealed that she was having quadruplets, the parents of her patients would frequently inquire about her pregnancy, and she loved seeing their smiles light up. She saw James on the hospital's waiting room TV one rainy day while she was going over patient paperwork. With Lily grinning next to him, he was revealing a new technological advance. Upon noticing his new hairstyle and the high-end suit that had taken the place of his old sweatpants, Catherine experienced an odd sense of disengagement. The man appeared to be a complete stranger on the television. All 4 of her babies, it seemed, selected that time to kick, as if to tell her where her attention should be. Grinning, she rubbed her stomach. "Yes," she said. "I know you're there, little ones." Her planned future with James had fallen apart, but a new one was emerging, centered on the little hearts pounding beneath her own. As she moved into the 3rd trimester of her pregnancy, things became more difficult. Sleep grew elusive, her back hurt, and her ankles swelled. But Catherine was determined to face every day, so she made lists, went to parenting seminars, and prepared for every possibility. As she investigated multiple births and the unique difficulties they present, her medical training proved beneficial. Unable to sleep late one night, she ventured into the nursery. Soft shadows were made on the 4 cribs by the moonlight that came in through the windows. She started talking to her babies while sitting in a rocking chair with her hands holding her huge belly. She continued quietly, "Your dad used to be a dreamer with a laptop and a hopeful heart. We were ecstatic, surviving on quick noodles and love." Feeling the familiar movement beneath her hands, she paused. "However, people change and that's acceptable. Because now that I have all 4 of you, we will create something lovely together." Catherine was forced to begin her maternity leave by Dr. Chun at 8 months. A surprise baby shower was thrown by her co-workers on her last day of work. There were so many well-picked gifts in the break room for a mother who was expecting 4 children. In order to aid her after the births, the nurses even made a plan and offered to work shifts, so she wouldn't be left alone. The final preparations were completed by Catherine as her due date drew near. She made arrangements for a temporary leave of absence from the hospital, hired a part-time nanny, and created a thorough birth plan. Everything was set up with surgical precision in the nursery. For every baby, she had even prepared a modest hospital bag with their names meticulously embroidered on tiny blankets. The media's focus was drawn to James's glitzy new life with Lily, and they had long since lost interest in his ex-wife. The only people who knew about Catherine's pregnancy were her hospital co-workers, her true family, and a select group of close friends who supported her following the divorce. As Catherine sat quietly one evening filling out the papers for her extended leave, she started to feel the first contractions. She timed them, contacted her medical team, and collected her hospital bags with the cool efficiency of a physician. As the contractions grew more intense, she stopped at her front door and turned to face the apartment that had been the scene of both her most painful breakup and her path to this point. "Here we go," she said, one palm on her stomach, whether she was ready or not. She entered the hallway, moving into a future that would be difficult, draining, and completely her own. Not at all what she had imagined. What she didn't know at the time was that this was only the start of a story that would eventually come full circle and reveal things that would upend everyone's meticulously built realities. A flurry of first words, first steps, and innumerable memories documented in pictures that adorned Catherine's new home's walls spanned 5 years. The little but cozy suburban home was a world different from the opulent penthouse she and James had previously occupied, but it was filled with something much more valuable: the laughing of kids. By now, the quadruplets were active 5-year-olds, each with an own personality but a striking likeness to their father. There were the boys Charlie, the kind-hearted soul whose smile could enchant anybody; Ben, the inquisitive problem solver; and Alex, the oldest by 2 minutes and born leader. Diana was the youngest by 4 minutes, but she was tough and fiercely protective of her brothers. In ways she could never have predicted, Catherine's life had changed. Her children's clinic had grown to become one of the most prestigious in the city. While managing the responsibilities of 4 children and a successful medical career, she found strengths she was unaware she had. Every morning in their home was a meticulously planned dance. Catherine said, "Alex, please help Ben with his shoelaces." One morning while she was making 4 distinct breakfast plates because no 2 kids had exactly the same preferences, Diana insisted on arranging her fruit in rainbow designs, while Charlie was obsessive about eating only heart-shaped toast during this era. "Look, Mom," showing her his most recent science project, a solar system constructed out of painted styrofoam balls, Ben enthused. When he discussed his scientific advancements, his eyes gleamed with the same excitement she had seen in James's face. Mrs. Parker, the nanny, showed up at 7:30 a.m. exactly as she had for the previous 5 years. She was now more than just assistance. She was family. For exuberant hugs were given to her as she said, "Good morning, my little scientists." Their playroom was stocked with age-appropriate educational toys and simple coding games, demonstrating the children's inherent love of technology from their father. Catherine's tenacity was demonstrated by her clinic. Because she had first-hand experience with the demands of parents of several children, she had created it from the ground up. There was a creative play space in the waiting room, and she had set up a scheduling system that catered to families with twins or triplets. She was more aware than most of the difficulties involved in juggling the appointments of several children. She heard her employees talking about the newest tech news one afternoon as she was going through patient files in her office. Although James's business had introduced yet another groundbreaking innovation, there were whispers that he was having personal problems. According to reports, the age difference and divergent life ambitions had finally taken a toll on his relationship with Lily. Catherine was not pleased to hear this. In order to focus on creating a life that made her proud, she had long since gone past the hurt and rage. Her children were her pride. They were brilliant, affectionate, and inquisitive about the world. Catherine had carefully selected a sophisticated private school for the quadruplets because of its emphasis on individual growth and nurturing atmosphere. Their remarkable skills were frequently praised by their teachers. By planning complex playground games with his siblings and classmates, Alex demonstrated leadership abilities above his years. Even older kids found it difficult to solve the complicated puzzles that Ben could solve. Charlie was incredibly emotionally intelligent and could always recognize when someone was in need of consolation. Diana's artistic abilities were already attracting notice. Her drawings showed a level of complexity that was out of character for her age. Their principal had told them during a parent-teacher meeting that they were exceptional kids. It is uncommon to witness such a blend of emotional development and intelligence in such young youngsters. Catherine had grinned because she knew that every praise she received for her kids supported the choice she made 5 years prior. Life had its share of difficulties. There were days when juggling for separate interests seemed impossible, nights when she fell asleep exhausted, and times when she wished she had someone with whom to share the pleasures and challenges. But Catherine had a network of allies. She built a community around her family with the help of her neighbors, Mrs. Parker, other parents from school, and the clinic staff. Only the most basic information about their father, that he was a prosperous businessman who was absent from their lives, was known to the kids. Catherine did not allow them to see his magazines or news appearances because she wanted them to develop their own identities free from the influence of their father's celebrity. While the guys were working on Diana's art project one evening, Catherine noticed their reflection in the window as they constructed a complex Allegio structure nearby. 5 focused heads, each working separately but together, each following their own interests while staying in touch. These 4 amazing kids, who possessed the best qualities of both their parents, were her true success story, not the flourishing clinic or the cozy life she created. The clinic's popularity had drawn unanticipated attention. She had been invited to speak at conferences, and her creative approach to pediatric care was coveted by medical publications. Always mindful of her privacy and shielding her kids from unwelcome attention, Catherine handled these chances with caution. Her reputation for treating multiple births grew as a result of her personal experience, which deepened her professional expertise. In search of solace from a physician who genuinely understood their difficulties, other parents of twins, triplets, and even the unusual quadruplets sought her out. Catherine was unaware of the impending intersection of her past and her meticulously crafted environment. Her participation was expected as one of the top pediatricians in the city was organizing the annual gala for the largest children's charity in the city. Her path might cross James's for the first time in 5 years, and she had no idea how this encounter might upend the foundations of their lives. Every day the kids were becoming more observant. Alex had recently questioned why his friends' family photos featured a father while theirs did not. Instead of having the same last name as the large tech business building downtown, Charlie had questioned why they had their mothers. Diana had seen that when they smiled, each of them had their father's small dimple and deep brown eyes. Catherine didn't want to keep them from knowing the truth, but she realized she couldn't do so forever. She had brought them up in an open and honest manner, and they would eventually need to know the whole truth. That day simply hadn't arrived so quickly. Catherine felt a mixture of pride and trepidation as she put them to bed that night and saw their placid faces, which resembled those of their father. Life had a way of making things whole again, and she had turned what could have been a tragedy into something lovely. Her efforts to safeguard everything would be put to the test as the next chapter of their journey approached. The annual Children's Healthcare Gala was held in the Grand Plaza Hotel, which was dazzlingly decorated. In contrast to the couture gowns she used to wear to such gatherings, Catherine changed her plain evening gown, which was navy blue. It was not glamour that brought her here tonight. one of the top physicians in the city, she was invited to talk about the creative family care approach her clinic takes. "Your kids are ready for movie night, Dr. Reynolds," Mrs. Parker texted. Catherine grinned as she thought about her 4 children still in their pajamas, perhaps arguing over which movie to watch. Though she was aware of the significance of representing her clinic at such events, these few evenings out were always tinged with remorse. There was light music and discussion in the ballroom. Medical specialists and wealthy philanthropists interacted, all of them committed to the cause of children's healthcare. With quiet assurance, Catherine navigated the gathering, talking to potential donors about her work. Instead of being respected for her previous affluence, she had learned to negotiate these waters on her own terms. Then she recognized the chuckle that used to fill their house. As usual, there were admirers all around James as he stood across the room. Something was different. Even though he had aged nicely and his hair was now interwoven with distinguished silver at the temples. Lily, the young model, wasn't with him tonight. At the sight of him, Catherine's heart stopped racing. Rather, she experienced an odd sense of peace and security in a life she created. Her focus returned to the discussion she had with a hospital board member regarding the expansion of pediatric services. Everything went according to plan until the children's choir, a highlight of each year's gala, began to perform. A group of young performers, including a class from her children's school, poured in as the doors opened. Among them, Catherine recognized Ben, Charlie, Diana, and Alex, and her breath caught. A last-minute choir practice was mentioned by Mrs. Parker, but she made no mention of a performance. The quadruplets were adorable and polished as they stood there in their matching school uniforms. Months prior, they had pleaded with Catherine to join the choir, and she had accepted without ever relating it to this occasion. The crowd quieted down when the kids started to sing. As Catherine gazed at her 4 treasures, the exquisite chandeliers illuminated their faces. Ben moved slightly to the music, Charlie grinned his heartfelt smile, Diana's clear voice carried the melody, and Alex stood tall and self-assured. At that moment, she sensed James's close proximity. She knew the precise moment he saw them, when he had stepped closer to see the show. The 4 similar faces on stage caused his eyes to widen as his champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. He was clearly the father of the children. They possessed his eyes, his smile, and even his head-tilting technique when he was focused. They resembled his younger self in every way when he was 5. As the song came to a close, the audience erupted in cheers. Catherine's kids looked around the crowd until they saw her, beaming with joy. "Mother!" They waved heartily and yelled out in almost perfect harmony. She waved back, smiling, conscious of James's astonished eyes now on her. The ballroom's ambience had changed, yet the choir filed out for their next performance in another room. People were making connections, and whispers were circulating through the gathering. It was no longer a private affair that the quadruplets existed. "They belong to me." From behind her, James's voice was a declaration rather than a query. Catherine looked at him, observing the expression that was a mixture of surprise, rage, and amazement. "Yes," she said plainly. "Diana, Ben, Charlie, and Alex." His voice was tense with intensity as he said, 5 years. You've been raising kids for 5 years. "James, you made your decision," Catherine interrupted gently. "I created my..." He was about to reply when his phone buzzed. Lily didn't answer, but his name was displayed on the caller ID. An additional puzzle piece came into alignment. When it came to Problems in Paradise, the gossip columns had been correct. "They're gorgeous," he said, directing his gaze to the doorway where the kids had vanished. "Indeed they are." Catherine concurred that they are. "They are intelligent, kind, and adored." An evening of cautious maneuvering turned into a whirl. Deftly sidestepping personal queries, Catherine stayed for her prepared address regarding pediatric care. James stayed in the ballroom and appeared to be deep in contemplation. He kept taking out his phone to seek up news stories about his ex-wife's quadruplets that he must have missed. The pupils received considerably more attention than they had previously received when they returned for the final. As Catherine observed them, James took note of how Alex helped Ben straighten his tie, how Charlie gave Diana a tissue when she sneezed, and how they worked together while retaining their unique identities. When Catherine collected her kids after the show, they were giddy with anticipation over their gift for her. "Mom, were you pleased with our songs?" Diana inquired as the boys discussed their favorite portions over one another. As Catherine helped them with their coats, she reassured them that you were all amazing. She sensed that James was hanging close by, unsure of whether to approach. Their father, a stranger who shared their DNA, was just a few steps away, but the kids were too preoccupied with their post-performance elation to see him. Alex abruptly halted as they were about to leave and turned to face James. Something flickered, maybe a flash of recognition, maybe a flash of innocent curiosity. Then Diana pulled on her brother's hand, and the split second went by. There was a lot of talk on the way home about the show, the elegant ballroom, and the amazing dessert table they were permitted to see afterwards. As Catherine heard their joyful voices, she realized that everything had changed that night. The past had crashed with their meticulously guarded environment, and the resulting ripples would soon become into waves. Later, when the kids had gone to sleep, Catherine sat in her peaceful kitchen with a cup of tea that was getting cold in front of her. "We need to chat" was one of the texts she saw on her phone, along with multiple missed calls from James' number. Her refrigerator was covered with pictures of the five of them, sans him, from birthday parties to first days of school to holiday celebrations. She was aware, however, that her kids should know their father and that James should know his kids in spite of his previous decisions. Painful discussions and painful choices would await us tomorrow. But tonight, Catherine gave herself permission to feel proud of her children's accomplishments, as well as the inner strength she discovered to create this life. That strength was going to get them through whatever came their way. She was unaware that, across town, James sat in his deserted penthouse, surrounded by money, but feeling even worse as he gazed at a hurriedly taken picture of four little faces that resembled his own, singing passionately under the Grand Plaza Hotel's sparkling lights. There was an air of inevitable arrival to the morning following the gala. Knowing that everything was going to change made Catherine's children's usual morning turmoil seem even more precious as she sat at her kitchen counter and watched them eat breakfast. "Can we have choir practice today, Mom?" Diana inquired, arranging her cereal in thoughtful designs. Catherine's phone flashed another James message before she could respond. His most recent text message, "Please, coffee at the park near your clinic, just to talk," was sent after she had rejected his calls the night before. The weekend routine for the kids went on as usual. Mrs. Parker, who was not aware of the shocking discovery from the night before, came to take them to their swimming lessons. When Catherine eventually responded to James, she was standing by the coffee cart by the playground at 2 p.m., watching them all cram themselves into the minivan with their bright blue swim bags. She needed the familiar setting to collect her thoughts, so she went into her clinic even though it was quiet on the weekends. The children's artwork on the walls, including a few pieces created by her own four, brought back memories of everything she had accomplished on her own. It was exactly 2 o'clock when she saw James walking toward the park bench. Wearing simple clothes instead of his customary fancy suit, he resembled the man she had fallen in love with years before. His flawlessly combed hair and pricey watch were the only things left of his millionaire status. When he handed her a coffee, he commented, "You look good." He could still recall how she enjoyed it. She took the cup and acknowledged James. "I'm assuming you have inquiries." He combed his hair, a motion she recognized from their early days together, when he was having trouble with challenging coding challenges. "Queries? For 5 years, I didn't know anything about my 4 children, Catherine. Questions aren't even close to covering it." She answered calmly, "You made it clear that you wanted a new life. I gave it to you, but they're also my kids." His tone lifted a little, and he saw that he was looking around the park. "I had a legitimate curiosity." "Have you?" quietly, Catherine inquired. "You sent me divorce papers on our anniversary after leaving me for a younger lady. James, tell me what you would have done if you had been aware of the pregnancy. Refrain from being obligated. To preserve your reputation, fight for custody." As a family with their dog passed by, he fell silent. "I finally said, Lily and I split up 3 months ago. She desired a family. I kept claiming that I wasn't prepared. Isn't it ironic? His confession did not satisfy Catherine. James, the children are content. They are doing well. I already see leadership qualities in Alex that remind me of you. Ben works on puzzles that most adults would find difficult for hours on end. Charlie still has your old charm, and Diana has such a different perspective on the world. James listened carefully, taking in every nuance of his kids' lives. They're amazing, he whispered quietly as he watched them perform last night. It's like nothing I've ever felt. Catherine concurred that they are amazing. Therefore, it must be about them and not us, regardless of what occurs next. Nor your shame, nor my grief from the past. Just the finest course of action for 4 5-year-olds who have never met their father. As they conversed, they worked through 5 years of unsaid words under the lengthy shadows formed by the afternoon sun. James showed her photos of the kids he had been able to get on his phone during the show. She told him about their personalities, their first words, and their first steps. He finally answered, "I want to be a part of their lives. I'd like to try, but I know I don't deserve it. Anything you believe is best, whether it's parenting classes or therapy, I'll do it. Whatever agreements you want to keep them out of the press, I'll sign." Catherine looked into his face and saw real anguish and need. It will not be easy. They are mature enough to have thoughts and concerns about this. We'll need to proceed cautiously and gently. I get it, he said. I am able to wait. My goal is to avoid missing any more of their lives. Catherine's phone was buzzing with photos from Mrs. Parker of the kids during their swimming session. All 4 of them performing flawless streamlines underwater, while they were conversing. She showed it to James, and his eyes glowed. They're also naturally athletic, she said. From your side of the family, they inherit that. The subject turned to more pragmatic issues. Instead of arguing, James had already contacted his attorneys to establish trust funds for each child. Catherine noted how different this James was from the man who had left 5 years prior as he described his ambitions. The press will learn, she said. Your 4 children will be well known. He said, I'll take care of it. My PR team is capable of handling the news and diverting attention from the kids. I don't want that circus to see them. They began to formulate a plan as the afternoon went on. They would begin under the supervision of a child psychologist and progressively introduce James, always taking into account the children's comfort levels. As a friend of their mother, he would greet them first, allowing time for everyone to become used to the situation. Catherine added, You should know something else. Before you shifted to consumer technology, you used to constantly claim that you wanted to heal illnesses. Along with being a doctor like me, Alex told his teacher that he also wants to create new medications. Ben aspires to construct medical assistance robots. James's eyes were suspiciously bright as he grinned. What about Diana and Charlie? In reference to a psychiatrist, Charlie claims he will become a doctor for people's emotions. In order to make children's hospitals less frightening, Diana intends to paint murals there. James's expression, which was one of agony and pride, was quite telling. Softly, he remarked, They're already better people than I got to be. James was about to depart, but he paused. I'm grateful, Catherine, for successfully raising them not just today, for having the strength to do it on your own. I am aware that I am unworthy of pardon. She interrupted gently, This isn't about forgiveness. It's about 4 kids who should be aware of their origins. Please, James, don't harm them. They're still small, but they're tough. He gave a somber nod. Promise me, whatever transpired between us, I will not disappoint them. Catherine felt somehow lighter as she made her way back to her car. The path ahead would be difficult, but she knew she had made the right choice now that the secret she had kept for 5 years was out. James deserved to know the wonderful individuals their children were growing up to be, and the kids needed to get to know their father. Neither of them understood that this was only the start of a trip that would unimaginably change the course of their lives. Their newly acquired knowledge was about to be put to the ultimate test. The subject turned to more pragmatic issues. In order to create trust funds for each child, James had previously contacted his attorneys, not to argue. Catherine noted how different this James was from the man who had left 5 years prior as he described his ambitions. The press will learn, she said. Your 4 children will be well known. He said, I'll take care of it. My PR team is capable of handling the news and diverting attention from the kids. I don't want that circus to see them. They began to formulate a plan as the afternoon went on. They would begin under the supervision of a child psychologist and progressively introduce James, always taking into account the children's comfort levels. As a friend of their mother, he would greet them first, allowing time for everyone to become used to the situation. Catherine added, You should know something else. Before you shifted to consumer technology, you used to constantly claim that you wanted to heal illnesses. Along with being a doctor like me, Alex told his teacher that he also wants to create new medications. Ben aspires to construct medical assistance robots. James's eyes were suspiciously bright as he grinned. What about Diana and Charlie? In reference to a psychiatrist, Charlie claims he will become a doctor for people's emotions. In order to make children's hospitals less frightening, Diana intends to paint murals there. James's expression, which was one of agony and pride, was quite telling. Softly, he remarked, They're already better people than I got to be. James was about to depart, but he paused. Kate, I'm grateful not only for today but also for raising kids so well and for having the strength to handle things on your own. I am aware that I am unworthy of pardon. She interrupted gently, This isn't about forgiveness. It's about 4 kids who should be aware of their origins. Please, James, don't harm them. They're still small, but they're tough. He gave a somber nod. I swear that I won't disappoint them, no matter what happens between us. Catherine felt somehow lighter as she made her way back to her car. The path ahead would be difficult, but she knew she had made the right choice now that the secret she had kept for 5 years was out. James deserved to know the wonderful individuals their children were growing up to be, and the kids needed to get to know their father. Neither of them understood that this was only the start of a trip that would unimaginably change the course of their lives. Their newly acquired knowledge was about to be put to the ultimate test. James's eyes began to well up with tears. I'll say yes to anything. Catherine watched the exchange with conflicted feelings. The last few months had been difficult, navigating her own complicated emotions, helping the kids comprehend the reality, and handling the media attention when the story broke. However, it was worth it when she witnessed the mending occurring in front of her. Later that day, James and Catherine sat and watched the kids play on the neighborhood playground. They're giving me a chance that I don't deserve, he added softly. Catherine said, Children have a wonderful capacity for love. They receive that by being loved in return. James nodded, realizing that what she had spoken had more depth. Catherine, I realize we can't go back to the way things were, but perhaps we can create something better for them. I never wanted anything else, she remarked quietly. As the park was covered with lengthy shadows from the setting sun, the family grabbed their possessions. Each child had spent particular time with their father, and they were both thrilled and exhausted. James requested politely, Same time next weekend. We have soccer practice at 10, Alex told him. Come take a look. I'll be there, James said, and he meant it wholeheartedly. Diana hurried back to give James a final embrace as they made their way to their individual vehicles. She whispered to their brothers, Daddy, I love you, and then ran back to them. Those 4 simple words healed something broken inside me, James said, standing rooted to the spot. Catherine looked up at him and grinned, a sincere smile that conveyed hope and forgiveness. A romantic reunion between the parents was not a happily ever after. Instead, it was a more realistic and possibly more beautiful picture of 2 parents putting their pasts aside in order to provide their kids a good future. There would be obstacles along their way, but they would overcome them as a family, redefining themselves through love, compassion, and second chances.